Yo, what is going on? In this video, what we're going to be talking about is 5 different ways how you can dramatically increase your productivity upwards north of 500%. Now, we're going to be speaking on a sort of broad level, but the thing is like the more different tools you have in your tool belt and you can just easily pull out, the more easier it is for you to reach higher states of productivity and peak performance in any endeavor, whether it's business, whether it's some athletic sport, whether it's some sort of even job you're in that requires you to operate at your best. All 5 of these tools we're going to be discussing. You can call them tools, you can call them frameworks, whatever you want to call it. They will enable you to always perform at your peak. So let's get right into it. Now, very first one up is obviously what's been the most hottest talk in the past almost 2 years, and that's really with leveraging AI. Now, I know there's different ways you can use these tools, whether it's like all these different softwares that are coming out every single day at this point, right? I wouldn't be surprised if it's even every single hour, but there's so many of these different tools, and the way I want to position how you can be actually leveraging this to your most benefit is by using it as a sort of extension of your thinking. Now, by the way, there's like a statistic online somewhere where it says people who use this can increase their productivity upwards north of 40% just with using AI as an extension of your mind. And that's like just base level, but you can already see that how fast technology is replacing people, which is absolutely crazy. And all it really is at the end is just performance. It's being able to get some sort of output at the end of the day, whether it requires human labor or it can just be completely automated and systemized into some sort of code. Now, when I talk about systemizing and using AI as an extension of your thinking, you're not necessarily outsourcing your thinking because thinking is absolutely critical. You have to be able to understand how to think for yourself in the first place. And that's the thing too. When I first started playing with these tools, very early on when it started just becoming really, really hot, like over a year ago at this point, I was always just playing with it as if it's just a tool I can use to brainstorm in, to see different perspectives, maybe view things in a different light that maybe my biases are preventing me, or even my cognitive distortions, they're preventing me from seeing. And when you're using it as a sort of extension of your thinking, what's happening is that you're basically boosting your ability to think, to see things, to process things differently, to make better decisions. So you can use this thing to like literally 1000x your potential output, to solve decisions better, to plan out, map things, outline things. That's the gist I want you to kind of view it as if it's just this tool you can use to like leverage your thinking. And in a way, humans, we already are in a way cyborgs. I think I mentioned in one of my prior videos, maybe like 2-3 videos ago, I forget which one it was, but I mentioned something around this theory called the extended mind theory. And what this theory posits is that we use tools to become extensions of our thinking. Now, right now, well, what do is we always carry with ourselves phones, laptops, tablets, whatever it may be. And in a way, when you leave these tools at home, it just kind of feels odd that we don't have them nearby, as if like some part of ourselves is not there. So that's kind of the gist. I mean, like now, it's very difficult to see how I would not use AI at this point. And it's sort of evolving into that. And I can't imagine in the future how it's going to be with like these different BCIs and these different tools, or like for those of you who don't know what a BCI is, it's a brain computer interface, kind of like something what Neuralink is building. And now there's these other ones coming out too, which are absolutely crazy. But that's basically kind of what it is. It's just a form of extension of your thinking. We already are cyborgs. Like whether you're using glasses, whether like simple as that, using a simple iWatch, Apple iWatch or whatever, I think that's the name. I forget. Anyway, Apple Watch, and using these other tools, they're just extensions of your mind in order to process things, have data, have all this better sort of insight in order to navigate life, I guess you can say, right? So that's that with AI. Next up in the tool belt is flow. Now, flow is this optimal state of consciousness. You lose yourself in the work. Work becomes effortless. Time distorts, where now there's this like expanded sense of time. Also, the sense of self disappears and you basically become merged with the task, with whatever you're doing. Now, there's studies online where show that you can increase your productivity upwards of 500% simply just by being in flow, right? Like 5x. And when you're in flow, people perform at their best, right? Like some of the most craziest human feats in life, they've been performed in flow. Like how are all these crazy records being broken in like athletics, sports, and all that? It's mostly because some of these people, when they're performing these crazy stunts, these crazy activities that could be life or death, they have to be like in this crazy state. It's not a crazy state, but it's just a state where you have to perform at your peak. Otherwise you could die, right? Especially to like in like military forces, special operations, things of that nature. And flow state is literally alternative state of consciousness. It's literally the stuff going on in your head changes. Different chemicals are being released. The top 6, for instance, dopamine, serotonin, anandamide, oxytocin, endorphins, and norepinephrine. So it's literally changing the way you see and perceive the world, helping you get into these states where it's sort of like that mental chatter, it disappears and then you just become merged with the work. And some of the easiest ways you can enter these states is by these things called triggers. Now, Stephen Kotler, he's a big proponent. He's a huge knowledge expert in flow state, and reading his work, reading work from the guy named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, another flow state researcher. There's these things called flow triggers. So one of the most easiest ways, because just for context, when we directionalize our attention, our focus towards something clear, or have like these like triggers just to get into this state, it's much more easier in order to enter flow and then perform at our best. So some easy ones that you can just use immediately are setting goals. When you have clear objectives, you can get much more easier into flow. Another one is like having novelty. So rather than a task always being boring, having new information, new things appearing so you can much more easier slip into flow and keep yourself engaged. Another one is the skill challenge ratio, where things aren't boring and things aren't necessarily far out of your reach, but rather in the sort of middle point where it's challenging you enough just so you're staying engaged and at your peak, because if you slip up, well, hey, you can mess up. But that's kind of like the whole point behind deliberate practice, where when you're practicing and it's not boring, but it's not too far out of your skill range, you're still actively engaged. So this is another way you can enter into flow. Following up, we have maker time. Now, maker time is this type of time block in your schedule popularized by Paul Graham from YC Combinator. And this is basically a stretch of time you can put into your day where you just focus on nothing other than creating. Now, for instance, as I'm recording this video, I'm in maker time right now. It's for creativity, long, undisturbed blocks of time where I can much more easier slip into flow as I'm speaking, as I'm scripting something, or something that has something related in nature with the work I'm doing. So creativity, things like that, coding, designing. That's what maker time is all about. And the reason why you want to promote these long stretches is just how you can complement with maker time with flow, as I just described before. Because when you're in flow, you don't want to just context shift all the time, because it's taking you out of your groove and it's going to make you perform even better, not as optimal as you would if you were just simply working, or you would just stick with working on tasks that are similar in their nature. So the longer you can stretch out these time blocks and the longer you can stay in them, the much more better you'll perform. And as a result, your work is much more better. And ideally, if these work blocks don't have, let's say, for instance, like very urgent or small time gaps, like you want these blocks to be 4 hours plus, as an example, or even not even have any sort of time block to it, just so you don't feel the sense of pressure or urgency to force some sort of workout. Another way you can simply just improve your productivity, I believe research says around this is around 20%, just by simply leveraging this, is by maximizing your performance and your work schedules for your chronotype. Now, chronotype is basically the sort of internal circadian rhythm within your body where throughout the day, we have these different states of alertness. And not everyone performs the same throughout the day. So for instance, some people perform strangely really, really good at night. Or for other people, it's neither the morning or the night. It's the middle of the day. So there's these things called chronotypes, and you can basically call them as like archetypes for types of individuals. And when do they perform the best at or during the day? Now, for everyone, it's going to be different. For me, for instance, the chronotype that I believe I am is somewhere in between of a lion and a bear. So I ideally do not want to wake up right away and then just go straight into work. I've split tested with that. I've split tested with other ways. I've split tested with working middle of the day and in the middle of the night. And from all the split tests, or all these split tests, I figured out that I need a little bit of this sort of wind up period where I read in the morning and it gets my brain working. And then I do a workout. And then once I go into work, it's much more easier to slip into flow. It's much more easier to be productive. And I'm just fully alert. And I forget where or the exact name of the source that I'm talking about right now. But I also found out that this also coincides your chronotype with the most alert, or like when your nervous system is the most alert throughout the day. You want to figure out when you are the most alert throughout the day, where you're still clean, you don't have too much cognitive load opened up in your mind. And it's a period of the day where you're much more easier to slip into these very productive states, whether it's in flow, whether you just have nothing on your mind to worry about. It's just these states where you can simply optimize and have the best work performance. So figure out what your chronotype is. There's a bunch of free quizzes online and you can just easily figure that out. And the thing is, one suggestion is to not get completely stuck on what these fixed chronotypes are, because you have to, in the end, split test what's the most ideal time of the day for you to work. So for me, it was just a matter of self-experimentation, and I figured out it's somewhere between 7 and 12 p.m. That's when I do awesome work. And as of most recently, for the last tip, this has been popularized in like the last 4 years with the advent, or not even, I wouldn't even say advent now, I'd just say the popularization of second brains. And studies show that you can increase your productivity by up to 35% just by having a simple note-taking or note management tool. Now, there's people out there like Tiago Forte and all these different people who specialize using all these different tools, reviewing them, creating these different frameworks. You don't have to do all these like crazy things, in my opinion. I started off with Obsidian roughly 4 years ago, and I still use it to this day. Don't really have a need to switch it because it does the work, but the main point of it is to use it as literally a second brain, because you're offloading things going on your head, and which may be having open loops, as in like, oh, you have to like worry about this, or like, oh, this is a really interesting insight. Like, you can't trust your brain to hold all these things, because I want to also tie this into like something Socrates said. You don't want to be a vessel of knowledge. You want to be a kindling flame of knowledge. And when you're a kindling flame of knowledge, it basically means you have resources and things you can easily tap into and then use that to like spin something up, whether it's like an insight, it's a project idea, whatever it is. And in this case, it's a project management tool. And when you have this project management tool, you're basically offloading it, everything, kind of like even what you're doing with AI. You're just offloading things going on in your head so you don't have to process it, and then you're just letting technology to process it for you at levels you probably couldn't do yourself. The same thing here is for these note-taking tools. You're using these tools so you can offload what's in your head and then free that RAM up for other things like thinking, being able to process things better, being able to not even like stress and worry about all this stuff being carried on in your head, and just like let it just be somewhere. It's just like safely putting it in a storage box and then keeping it there, versus having just like filling up the house, or like, it's a metaphor of everything going on in your head, right? Like you don't want your brain to be cluttered with all like these knowledge things or just these notes, these insights, where odds are you're most likely going to forget about it. So always offload it to a second brain. That's been game changer for me. So that's that. That's going to be the video. I wanted to share these 5 different tips where you can literally dramatically increase your productivity, your performance, and how you're even performing as a human individual. So hope you found a lot of insight out of these tips. And other than that, I'll see you in another one. P.S. If you're not subscribed to my newsletter, check it out. On occasion, I'll be sending out emails to you with some of the top biggest insights I'm learning and something that can radically improve your life in some dimension. So if you're interested in that, if you found valuable in this video, then you're definitely going to like my newsletter. So check that out. See you in another one.